Why is a raven like a writing desk? That's the question the Mad Hatter asked Alice in Wonderland. And after a rabbit trail of conversation over some tea, he finally piped up and said, "Have you guessed the riddle yet?" And Alice said, "No, I give up. What's the answer?" And the Mad Hatter looked at her and said, "I haven't the slightest idea." You know, the whole world feels like a big riddle right now in a lot of different ways. A riddle that's hard to figure out. And so what's the answer to the riddle? Well, if you Google it, you'll discover about 8,675,309 answers to all that's going on. But we can't just go through that many answers. So what do we do? How do we deal with the riddle? How do we maneuver through the riddle? How do we make our way through this devastating, discouraging riddle that's surrounding the world? Well, philosopher R. Purvis Coltrane would ask you, "You got your ears on?" Yeah, the ultimate answer for what we do with the riddle is all wrapped up in how well we are listening. But listening to what? Well, Jesus would often use what's known as parables. They were stories, and they were kind of like a riddle. And he would tell a story, and then every now and at the end of the story, he would say this: "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." In other words, everybody was listening, but not everybody was paying attention. Listen, there's a whole lot of stuff for us to listen to right now, a lot of stuff for us to watch, a lot of stuff for us to read, but there's no way we can pay attention to all of it. So what's one thing that would be super helpful, that we would really do good to pay attention to right now? Well, 850 years before Jesus was born, there was a prophet. And the prophet was standing out by a mountain. And while he was standing there, a strong wind came up, like a hurricane force, tropical storm wind. And it pressed down upon the area. And it was so strong that it broke rocks into pieces. And then right after the strong wind, there was a violent earthquake. And the earthquake, it shook everything. And then right after the violent earthquake, there was a blazing fire. And the heat from that fire, it swirled up everywhere. And then right after that blazing fire, there was a still, small, quiet, gentle voice, like a whisper. And it was in that whisper that the prophet heard the voice of God. Listen, from news media to social media to watching the nightly news, even to our own minds, here's some realities. The wind of fear is strong, and the quakes of foolishness are real. And the fire of frustrations, man, it's hot. However, if you want to hear the voice of God, you have to get your ears on. And you're going to have to listen for that whisper of his voice of truth. Because the voice of truth, as one song says, that voice of truth, it tells us a different story. If we could stand out by a mountain in our minds, so to speak, get away from TV for a moment, get away from social media for a moment, get away from our own opinions for a moment. And if we could, in that moment, be super honest with our own hearts, we would discover that we're just like the Mad Hatter. When it comes to this riddle, we haven't the slightest idea. But maybe in that same moment, we would hear the whisper of the voice of God say, "I have the slightest idea." So do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For I will be with you wherever you go. That would be a voice to pay attention to. Hang in there. Be wise, be kind, and much grace to you and your family.